From the book entitled The Wisdom of Israel. The supreme crisis in the history of the Jews occurred in the year 70 A.D., when their holy city, Jerusalem, was razed by the Romans, and they were left without a name either for themselves or their God. Wrecked now, both as a cult and a nation, it looked as though Israel would soon be destroyed even as a people. The supreme crisis in history of the Jews occurred in the year 70 A.D., when their holy city Jerusalem was razed by the Romans, and they were left without a home either for themselves or their God. Wrecked now, both as a cult and a nation, it looked as though Israel would soon be destroyed even as a people. But then the rabbis came to the fore, and the doom seemingly so inevitable was averted. They created what would be called the Talmud, literally the teaching, and with it so walled in the Jews that they were able not merely to survive as a people, but even thrive. In this the rabbis were supplementing a feat already accomplished by the prophets. The latter had furnished a final answer to the why for the life of the Jews, and they had told him that he had been chosen for a holy mission, that he was the suffering servant of the Lord, and that he must survive despite all hardships because he alone could bring on the reign of the Lord. And now the rabbis came up with the answer to the how. They persuaded the Jew that though landless now, he could still survive if he would hold on to the Torah, the law. Ramparts of ritual, they insisted, could preserve him from the Gentiles more securely than any frontiers guarded by troops. And it was in the course of providing such ramparts that the rabbis brought forth the Talmud. The project began with a number of fragmentary notebooks containing some of the countless new ordinances derived by interpretation from the original 613 set down in the ancient Torah, being uneven in their scope and authority, and also largely discrepant. These notebooks were finally supplanted around 200 A.D. by a master digest which came to be known as the Mishnah, the repetition. This consisted of 6 well-organized volumes, giving some 4,000 legal decisions regulating every phase of Jewish life. No sooner, however, had the Mishnah been compiled than this in turn became a subject for interpretation, whereupon further compilation became imperative, and thus a work called the Gemara, the Learning, emerged. The latter was for more than a mere law code. It was a vast anthology divided into 63 tractates, which gave the gist of the endless discussions carried on in the rabbinical academies during all of 3 centuries. When the Gemara was finally reduced to writing around 500 A.D., it was combined with Mishnah and called the Talmud, the teaching. But even this did not exhaust the memorabilia of the rabbis. The Talmud, despite its diffusiveness, was primarily a legalistic anthology. Its compilers tried hard to include only such discussions such as related more or less directed to the statutes and customs which a Jew must observe in daily life, that left out an enormous amount of academic discourse of a broader and often more diverting nature. For example, there were more legends with which the rabbis loved to regale themselves, the homilies they preached, the parables they invented, and the wealth of curious information and casual wisdom which they kept handing down from one generation to the next. Once the Talmud was completed, this other material was gathered together, and a series of works appeared called the Midrashim, the expositions. Though these date from the 6th century onward, their contents are essentially contemporaneous with the Talmud itself, and they are therefore included in this section.